Hi, this is Mrs. Clark, and welcome to my video on solving multi-step equations. We're going to start out, excuse me, we're going to start out with this ISN page, which is our solving multi-step equations flowchart. And you glue this into your ISN, and you're going to follow these steps every time you're looking at something that looks to be like more than a two-step equation. We're going to go through these examples. You should have this worksheet. There's 8 examples on this worksheet. We're going to go through these examples together using that flowchart. I'm going to do the first one with you and explain it, and then I'm going to have you pause the video to do the second one on your own and check back for the work and the answer. So I'll only be going through and explaining the odd numbers, and then you'll be doing the even numbers to get some practice. So if we start with this first equation, first thing we're going to need to do is draw a line down where the equal sign is, because we need to look at our left side and our right side of our equation. So the first thing on our flowchart says to use the distributive property to remove parentheses on each side of the equal sign. I don't have any parentheses in this problem, so I'm going to skip to the next step. The next step says in number 2a, combine like terms on each side of the equation. So I'm looking on the left side and I see 3 terms, 8, negative 2, and negative 2p, positive 4p. So this negative 2 and this positive 4 both have a p attached to them, so those would be what we would call like terms. So in order to combine those, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the negative 2, which is in front of the p, and the positive 4 in front of the other p, and I'm going to put those together, and that's going to give me a positive 2, and then I'm going to put a p on it, because if I have negative 2p and I add 4p to it, I get positive 2p. So I'm really only just adding the coefficients. So when I go ahead and do that, I also have this 8 hanging around in the front here, but nothing else is like the 8. There's no other numbers by themselves in this problem. So that 8 is just going to come along with us down below as we move on. So for the next line in this equation, I'm going to keep the 8, because I didn't do anything to it, and then I have this negative 2p and this positive 4p, and they became a positive 2p, so I'm going to put plus 2p equals 12. Now it's a really easy two-step equation. I can continue to follow my flowchart, but I pretty much know what to do at this point. Number 3 says undo the addition or subtraction. So I have this 8 in the front. It's a positive 8. So in order to use the inverse of that, I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. 8 minus 8 is going to give me 0. So I'm going to have 2p left here equals 12 minus 8, which is 4. Now I have this 2p. Number 4 on my flowchart says to undo the multiplication or division. So 2p is 2 times p, so I'm going to divide by 2 to get rid of that 2 on both sides. I'm going to get p equals 4 divided by 2, which is 2, and that's going to be my final answer. So first thing I did was combine my like terms. Then I used my inverse to solve for p. So this is a pretty simple problem. Go ahead and pause the video and try number 2, and then check back for the work and the answer. Okay, here's the work and the answer. Check your work, pause it here, and I'm going to move on to the next question. All right, number 3. This time, I'm going to look at number 1. It says use the distributive property to remove the parentheses on each side of the equal sign. So if I look at where the equal sign is, I can draw this line here. The left side, I have a negative 8 parentheses 3p minus 3. So that negative 8, I'm going to have to distribute it. Distributive property says I need to multiply negative 8 times the positive 3p. Negative 8 times 3 is negative 24, so I'm going to have a negative 24p. Then I'm going to do the negative 8 times that negative 3. Negative times the negative is a positive, so I'm going to get a plus there. 8 times 3 is 24, so I'm going to put a plus 24 equals 216. So I have done all the distributive property that I can do, because there are no more parentheses. So then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step on my flowchart. So 2a says combine like terms on each side. On the left, I have a p term and a number term, so those are not going to combine. On the right, I only have a number. Okay, 2b, move like terms to one side. I have all my p's on the left side, so I'm going to keep moving. Undo the addition or subtraction. So I've got a plus 24. I'm going to do the inverse of that and do minus 24 on both sides. 216 minus 24 is going to give me 192. So on the left side, I have just the negative 24p equals 192. Then undo the multiplication or division. This negative 24 is being multiplied by the p, so I'm going to divide to get rid of it. And I do want to make sure I divide by the negative as well so that these two cancel out and I have p left over. But on the left side, I have 192 divided by negative 24. So that's going to give me a negative 8. So in this case, p is going to equal negative 8. So go ahead and pause the video now and do number 4 and then check back for the answer and the work. Okay, here's the answer for number 4. Go ahead and check your work and check your answer. Pause the video if you need to. Spend some time looking at it. I'm going to move on to number 5, sorry. Alright, number 5. If you notice, if I look where the equal sign is, I have 3 terms on the left and 2 terms on the right. I'll also notice this one's a little bit different because I've got x's on both sides of the equation. But again, I don't have any parentheses, so I'm going to skip that first step. And then part 2a of the flowchart says combine like terms on each side. So first thing I'm going to do on the left side, since I have 3 terms, I'm going to look for the things that are like. So I have this 7x, but there's no other terms with an x over here. So I'm going to bring that 7x down and do nothing with it yet. But then I have this minus 3 and this plus 6. I'm going to put those together. Negative 3 plus 6 is a positive 3, so I'm going to put plus 3 equals. When I go to the right side, I've got a number term, negative 13, and then I have an x term, positive 3x. So I'm going to just keep those separate because they're not like terms. But number 2b says move like terms to one side. So what that means is that I have 7x on the left side and 3x on the right side, and they're separated by this equal sign. So in order to get them together, I have to use inverse operations. I usually look for the smaller one, and I figure out the inverse of that, and that's how I move it to the other side with the bigger one. So the smaller one, I have a plus 3x, so that means that I'm going to do subtract 3x to get rid of it here. And I have to do it on both sides to keep the equation balanced. So when I do that, I'm going to have 7x minus 3x. And I'm going to get 4x plus 3 equals negative 13. Now all my x's are collected onto the left side of the equation. I've kept it balanced by doing inverses on both sides. And so now I have an easy 2-step problem. Next thing I do is undo the addition. So there's a plus 3. I'm going to minus 3 on both sides. 4x, these are going to cancel out, equals negative 13 minus 3, which is negative 16. And then I've got 4x, which is 4 times x. I'm going to undo that by dividing by 4. I'm going to get x equals negative 4. Okay, go ahead and pause this video so you can try number 6 on your own and then check back for the work and the answer. Okay, there's your answer for number 6 and the work. Feel free to pause it if you need to look over it more. I'm going to move on to question number 7. Alright, question number 7. This time I see a lot of different terms and I also see parentheses. So I'm going to have to go through all of the steps here to make sure I've got everything the way it needs to be in order to solve this quickly. So first thing is to use the distributive property to remove the parentheses on each side of the equal sign. So on the left side I've got parentheses, so I'm going to have to distribute. But I have this 4 in the front here, which is nothing is happening to that 4. It's not actually attached to the parentheses, so I'm just going to bring that with me down to the next step. But then I have this 8. 8 is in front of the parentheses, so that means 8 is going to get multiplied by 5. 8 times 5 is 40, so I'm going to put a plus 40 here. Then I have 8 times 5n, but we know 8 times 5 is 40, so it's going to be a plus 40n for this second part. Equals negative 32 plus 2n. So I have done my distributive property. Now we're 2a, combine like terms on each side. On the right side, I've got an n term and a number term, so those are already combined. On the left side, I have these two numbers here, 4 and 40, which can combine together, become 44, plus 40n, so again a number term and an n term, and now both sides have each a number term and an n term. So the next thing to do is look at 2b. It says move the like terms to one side. So I like to focus on my variables in this step. I've got a 2n on the right side, that's the smaller one, so it's a positive 2n, so I'm going to subtract 2n because my note says to use the inverse when I want to get these like terms together on the same side of the equal sign. So I have a 44, 40n positive 40n minus 2n is going to be a positive 38n, equals negative 32, and then these n's cancel out. So now all my n's are on the left. This should be easy because the next step I have to do is to undo the addition. I've got a positive 44. I'm going to subtract 44 on both sides. So I'm going to get 38n equals negative 32 minus 44, which is going to be a negative 76. Then I have a 38n, which is multiplying, so I'm going to divide by 38. N equals negative 76 divided by 38, which is negative 2. So I had to go through all the steps here. I had to use the distributive property, then I had to combine my like terms, then I had to move my like terms to one side, then I had to undo my addition, and then I had to undo my multiplication. So I used each of the 5 pieces of the flowchart in this problem. So go ahead and pause your video, try number 8, and check back for the solution, and then I will talk to you soon. Alright, here's the solution and all the work worked out for number 8. Keep in mind, when we get to these multi-step equations, there are some options where you can do one thing or another. So I decided in this problem to move the negative 12n by adding 12n to both sides. You could have also added 6n to both sides to do that, and you would have still ended up with n equals 2 at the end if you did your work correctly. So if you see that you're doing the steps in a different order, but they are getting you to the same solution, then I wouldn't be too worried about it. Whatever you're doing is working if you're getting to the right solution. So you have some choice when you get to the point where you're trying to move the variables to the same side. So you can feel free to move the smaller one like I do, or to move the bigger one, or whichever one you want to move is fine. As long as you're using the inverse operations, it should be fine to get you to the right answer. So keep in mind, again, there's multiple ways to do each problem when there are variables on both sides. So feel free to ask questions if you're not understanding what you did, or if you just want to make sure that what you did is correct. But if you're getting the correct answer, then everything should be good. So now go ahead and fold this in half, label it video solving multi-step equations on the outside, and glue it into your notebook, and then come and get the practice so that you can start practicing more examples like these on your own. The better you get at it, the more practice you do. So multi-step equations require lots of different practice because there's all different kinds. So get practicing. Thanks for watching.